The first principle is called schedule solitude. Now, why do I have a picture of a man who seems to have just shocked himself? Because of a recent experiment by Timothy Wilson from University of Virginia. I find this experiment fascinating, and it's a social psychology experiment. And what Wilson and his colleagues did, they asked 146 participants to sit in a room and do nothing but think. Well, the participants, half of them said they were uncomfortable with the experience, that they felt bored, they felt unhappy. So then what Timothy Wilson and his colleagues did is they then brought out a shocking apparatus that would provide this, that the participants could use to provide themselves with a light shock. So he asked them to shock themselves. They did, and invariably all of them said that they did not enjoy that at all. In fact, they said that they couldn't be paid to shock themselves. They wouldn't accept payment to do it. They really did not like it. So then what the experimenters did is they put the participants with that light shocking apparatus in a room alone. And what they found was actually very shocking, which is that 67% of the men, rather than sit there for 15 minutes and just think and do nothing, decided to administer shocks to themselves. 25% of the women also decided to shock themselves. This is despite them having filled out a survey stating that they did not enjoy shocking themselves. And so the conclusion that Wilson and his colleagues came up with is that people prefer doing something, even if it's unpleasant, to doing nothing. Okay, so why are the results from this experiment unsettling? Because actually, in terms of what you should focus on, well, you got to think that up yourself, and that takes time. That takes time alone. Requires a comfort with being alone. The philosopher Blaise Pascal once said, "All mental illness stems from man's inability to sit quietly in a room alone." So this principle is called schedule solitude, because if you can schedule all of your meetings with other people, you can schedule to go to your classes, you can schedule to do your homework, you can schedule to meet your friends and go out for a drink, or whatever your social activities are. You can schedule to meet someone for lunch. But can you schedule solitude? Can you schedule unstructured time just to think, to reflect, to think about life, to think about what you want to do in your career? Think about what kind of partner you would like if you're still single. To think about what kind of friends you want to spend your time with. Well, as we're going through these principles, we'll see that's a very critical skill and habit that has to be learned in order to really develop focus. I was reading a book by Stephen King on writing, and actually he had a very interesting concept, which is that any creative initiative begins with the door closed and ends with the door open. I find that fascinating. It's that if you want to develop new software, you want to develop a new line of clothing, you want to come up with new innovative financial practices, that actually you need to begin with the door closed to reflect and think about the vision, the ideas that you want to develop. Well, as we're seeing, very few people are able to do that. And especially in this technology-mediated society we're living in now, there are more and more distractions and less opportunities just to sit quietly in a room alone, or to go out for a walk alone, or go do yoga or meditation, or whatever it is that helps you to connect with yourself. Moving on, I really like this cartoon. Right? In the book of life, the answers are not in the back. Right? The answers in the book of life are within you, and you need to find them so you know what to focus on. So as we're talking about, it's getting harder and harder to disengage. This is a study of Americans found that in the last 24 hours, I think it's 95% spend at least some time in doing leisure activities, whether it's sports or going out with friends, any kind of leisure activities. Well, of those 95%, 83% said they spent none of that time whatsoever relaxing or thinking. This is also from a study by Wilson and his colleagues at University of Virginia. So less and less we're taking time to develop our own values, our own vision, of what we want to accomplish in our life. And that's really, when we think about focus, it has to be consistent, whatever you focus on, with whatever that vision is that you develop. So here's an exercise that I'd like to propose for you. As you're sitting here watching this video, if you don't mind to close your eyes for a moment, we're going to do a visualization. All right, so for this visualization, what I'd like you to do is to imagine that it's your 80th birthday, and you're having a birthday party. Imagine like for example, in a mountain lodge, and you've got a long wood table, and you've got all the people that you care about the most around that table with you. Well, they're going around one by one, and they're talking about you. They're talking about what you've meant to them, talking about how you've influenced them, about how proud they are of what you've accomplished in your life, and about the person you are. Well, at the end of the birthday party, everyone goes home, and you decide to go for a walk. You go walking someplace where you've always felt very centered. It could be walking on the shores and on a beach, listening to the sounds of the waves crashing. It could be you go walking up in the mountains, see a panoramic 360 view. Maybe walk in a forest, smelling the pine and eucalyptus. But you go walking in a place where you feel very centered, and you start thinking, what has given my life meaning? Like, what's made this all worth it? You know, when I look back, what gives me a feeling of contentedness with the way I've lived my life? Okay, now please open your eyes. What I'd like you to do is to write down what those people around the table were saying about you. And then even more importantly, what you were thinking to yourself about how you wish you had lived your life. Okay, perhaps pause the video to do this exercise, and then when you're ready, start up again. Okay, so hopefully you've had a chance to think about what would you want to be thinking about your life on your 80th birthday? What would you want the people you care about, first of all, who would be around the table with you? Because those are probably people you want to emphasize and focus on now. And also, what do you want them to be saying? What do you want to be thinking about your life? So to develop this time for yourself, to develop time to develop your own core values, your own life vision, here are a few quotes which hopefully you may find inspiring. So here's one by Epictetus from 100 AD, the Stoic philosopher. He says, "When you close your doors and make darkness within, remember never to say that you are alone. For you are not alone. Nay, God is within, and your genius is within. And what need have they of light to see what you are doing?" Here's another by Emerson. "None of us will ever accomplish anything excellent or commanding except when he listens to this whisper which is heard by him alone." Of course, him or her. Nietzsche. "All truly great thoughts are conceived by walking." And the last one, Cicero, and this is one of my favorites. "I am never less alone than when alone." In fact, I'm doing a lot of research on loneliness, which is considered to be perceived social isolation. Loneliness is different than aloneness. Aloneness is, sure, being isolated. So if you could say someone is living alone, that means they're living in isolation by themselves. That doesn't mean they're lonely. Lonely means they perceive themselves to be isolated. So the more you can develop your aloneness, the less you will feel lonely, and the more you will know what you want to focus on.